Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, please put your hands together for Gideon AI.
So the gist of this deck is you use these cards all in combination with this and this on the same turn after drawing through half of your deck with these and these and these. And you slow down the game with this, and then you kill your opponent in one turn. Alright, so right off the bat we got opponent is a Battlemage. We're thinking probably Prophecy aggro. And so we drop the 2-cost draw card because it simply needs a target. And we also drop the Winter's Grasp because it's pretty much too late against an enemy deck that probably has a high amount of burst, especially at the top end. We're thinking big charge creatures and lightning bolts. My opponent is playing pretty slowly for a Prophecy deck. We top deck a Curse and use it immediately. Again, mostly because of the security against those high damage plays coming in later in the game. Unfortunately, we don't get anything to fill out our curve whatsoever, which means we're probably going to be drawing those when we are most likely going to be wanting to react to the opponent. However, an extremely low tempo turn 4 leads into a relatively high tempo turn 5, unfortunately. We certainly are drawing all of our combo pieces, but the fact that we haven't seen a single Valmore Embassy is really, really bad for our position right here. Because we're holding 2 Lilandral Hexmages, but the chances that we're going to be able to get them both down at the same time are very unlikely. We can Winter's Grasp, or we can Swindler's Market right here. Swindler's Market does seem like the better option of the two, because then we get to get the full 2 cards, hopefully, of our remaining runes. Let's see if our opponent has enough damage to do just that. As I said before, we don't have any Thalmor Embassies up, so we can't protect against lightning bolts. And there's the lightning bolt. Down to 4 health. 3 health, sorry. We draw Merchant's Camel, which probably isn't going to see play. That's what I was referring to when I was talking about different creatures that aren't going to do a whole lot. And my opponent did not have Burst or Burn. So we just dig for the second Winter's Grasp. We don't find it. And we execute as much of the combo as we can just to demonstrate the power. Potential power, I suppose. Moving Shadows first because it requires a friendly target in case the Lightning Bolt comes out and kills the Hexmage. Close call and not a very high APM concede, but ended up dealing 18 damage to face at the end there. Next up we have Archer. So I'm thinking probably mid-range. However, just in case it's aggro, I drop the 5 drops so that we can make sure that we fill out the curve. Unfortunately, we don't get that. We do have a Lilandral Hexmage, which is incredibly crucial, but we have absolutely nothing we can play, just like the last game. But my opponent is playing a lot slower, simply by virtue of his deck, of course, but this is... yeah, that's just perfect. 2 damage. 2 damage over 5 Magicka. So we drop this guy in the shadow lane so that we can potentially maximize his stats and get some face damage out of this. Because I'm only holding 1 Lilandral Hexmage, I go for the other camel so that I can dig deeper and deeper to get my Swindler's Markets. Very low tempo. He's just desperate to get anything on the board. drawing the second Winter's Grasp is really awesome here. And we get 3 cycle cards, which is really good. And I could take the cheapest of the 3, but in this case, I'm actually looking to maximize damage on the board, which is a very rare thing for this deck to do. My opponent sets up a trade with the Varanus Courier, guaranteed a card draw, but pushes some face damage breaking a rune, which is really nice for me in this position. Not so nice with that Blood Dragon backing it up. Third Winter's Grasp going to come in very handy against this deck, which, as far as I know, doesn't run enough burst or charge creatures to take me out from a significantly high life total. Very old school combo. Then my opponent actually removes one of my camels, reducing the potential damage that I could have inflicted the next turn by 1. Every point counts in this deck. Now, my opponent does have a lot of damage on board, so I'm going to go ahead and freeze this. However, you always want to check for prophecies. Especially first rune prophecies. Those happen more often than not. So you always check for prophecies first, because you're going to want to catch them in the freeze when you throw that out. Wow. It's a fun combo, but doesn't do a whole lot on board. He might be holding 3 Cliff Racers for all I know, but it still wouldn't matter. I'm just taking my time. There's not many choices to be made here. Just gonna freeze the opponent's board again. And then he gets really scared, because he sees all the cards in my hand. He sees that I got a Swindler's Market up. So he starts making some very defensive plays, as opposed to the lower tempo plays of earlier. But it doesn't matter, because he has no way to counteract. In the Archer colors, he has no way to counteract the Landlord Hexmage during the turn that it's being played. And I'm holding 32 damage, is it? Getting in the cycle. And that's it. Moving on, we've got a Mage matchup, and that could be anywhere between aggro, mid-range, and control. And so I dropped the Curse specifically because it's bad against the early game Mage creatures. And I draw the Perfect Curve. Multiple ways of doing the Perfect Curve. So I could have used the Ice Spike there instead of the Spider Worker. In hindsight, that probably would have been a better idea. Reason being that you want to save your Spider Workers so that you guarantee a target for Cruel Fire Blooms and Close Calls. Playing the Swindler's Market over the Thalmor Embassy is usually just so that I can get some chip damage rolling. My turns here play themselves pretty much. There is a debate of whether to pick up a 0 cost, because there are a limited number of 0 cost actions in the deck, but I decided not to go for that because I think I've got time. I mean, it's playing relatively passively despite the 5th Legion trainer. Just put in as much damage as I possibly can on board. And my opponent recognizes that. Doesn't have an execute though, otherwise that merchant's camel would not be long for this world. Thankfully my opponent is also giving me a whole lot of cards. So much that I'm actually now risking overdraw, potentially. But against this kind of deck, it's probably not going to happen. Find yet another combo piece. Go ahead and make that guy lightning bolt proof, which is probably not going to be relevant. And then I go ahead and burn a card here just so that I don't overdraw. I decide to burn the card that is probably going to do the least for me. The paralyzes can help out later. The ward, lesser ward, can actually protect a Lilandral Hexmage against a lightning bolt prophecy, which can be very, very crucial. Sench Tiger coming down at 5 attack. Opponent breaks the rune. So I'm at 10 cards now. So I decide to draw first. Just to see what I can get. What do I get? Not a whole lot. Huh. So I'm going to want to play the Swindler's Market this turn. There's an argument for the Merchant's Camel, but I have basically everything I need ready to go. So right here, I'm probably going to overdraw if I let anything else go out here, but there's the first rune prophecy again. Like I said, there's a statistically higher chance of that happening. Can't prove it, but there is. And my opponent drops a 6-point heal, which is really rough for my gameplay. However, being an OTK deck, you kind of want to plan for the worst. You want to plan around Knights of the Hour, and so I am packing more than 30 damage in the hand. Drawing the Witch's Grasp here presents a very interesting choice. I could use it now. However, that does not play around a second heal. My opponent is also getting pretty scared now of a potential OTK. But that's exactly what he's going to get. Now I do have a movement card and Daggers in the Dark. There's another movement card. So I can combine those to squeeze an extra little bit of damage out of my board state. It doesn't matter as much here because we just are overflowing with the actions, but the opponent hit a Prophecy Javelin rune, for example. There's Lightning Bolt. Could not target the Hexmage because of the ward. Well, could target the Hexmage in the hopes of getting a third Lightning Bolt Prophecy. But that's just game. An excess of 8 damage left over. So these 3 games exemplify the matchups of this deck against aggro, mid-range, and control, and its strengths and weaknesses. Against aggro, you need to draw pretty much perfectly in order to have any chance of winning. Against mid-range, you're going to need to rely on drawing those Winter's Grasps so that you have enough time to get to play your combo pieces. Against control, you are very heavily weighted in favor of that matchup, simply because they give you enough time as part of their game plan. Of course, there aren't a whole lot of control players on the ladder nowadays, and most mid-range players will be playing at a much faster tempo than the archer that you saw in the video. That means that this list in particular, which is very all-in on the combo, should only be used in certain metas or local metas. I'm sure there are many different variations that can be played off of this list. Some that would be stronger against aggro, weaker against control. But this is probably the fastest list you can make off of this combo, averaging out at around turn 6 to 8 lethal. And remember to like ice cream because it's delicious, comment on your friend's fashion sense, and subscribe to an optimistic outlook on life. Go crazy.